us
a
period of time. And Matteo will go on parental leave. And he will go to Tenerife next week.
Yes.
To the sun. But to send him off and to say thanks for all the fun time. At the final mingle, there will be some Prosecco and snacks out in the open area. And afterwards, for those of you who wants to go to dinner, we will go to the Italian restaurant just close by and have some Italian food also. And send Matteo on his way into parental leave. Yeah. So I hope everyone will join. And tonight is on Future Position X. Just to
just if you were wondering, if you had to pay to come to join. This is all the things that we're gonna say today. And I think Henrik has already done a very nice introduction of it. It just already explained what is BIG before BIG. And I'm gonna tell you what BIG is, what it stands for. I have to tell you who I am first. I'm Matteo Giusti and I work at HIG, and I actually now work at FPX as well. And before starting this project, I worked with children. I work with human-nature relationships, and I try to understand how people develop an appreciation for nature so that they have an appreciation for nature enough to care and take care of it. And what we have seen in 2019, we started from 2015 and 16, and what we have seen is that this connection with nature makes also people healthy. Here together with Karl, we did analysis on where people restore, where people relax in Stockholm. And what we've seen is that people relax in a natural environment, more likely when the natural environment is biodiverse, is rich, is healthy, and more likely when these people are already connected with nature, when their environmental attitude is already high. So we started developing this thought that there is a personal, experiential factor that is important for the well-being of people, especially when they get in contact with nature. This is when Stefan and Per and Henrik, they got in contact with me and they told me that there is a new project that has a kind of a direction that I could be managing, directing, and leading. And this was called like this. It was called Big Data Methodology for an Experience-Based and Cognitively Stable Urban Growth. So whatever that meant, it also meant that I could kind of steer this into something that was experiential, was cognitive, into something that was fitting with my research. And this is the first slide, or a first meeting of the big project. This is the first slide of the kickoff. It was the 3rd of March in 2020. And here we basically started to understand what it actually means, what this project was about. And we tried to understand that we saw that this project was not only about producing knowledge, but it was about creating knowledge for solutions, solutions to problems. And these solutions were urban solutions, living solutions. So we really needed to find something to improve people's lives, to improve the quality of people in cities. Kind of solutions to ensure a healthy and safe life. And then we realized that these solutions were supposed to be biosocial spatial. And we had no idea what that could possibly mean. But we realized that we had to take into consideration the biology, the ecology of the ecosystem. We had to take into consideration the social dimension. And we had to take into consideration the community. We had to take into consideration the spatial configuration of these solutions. And not only, we also had to integrate these solutions. We couldn't find solutions for society, for a community, for a healthy community, and separately a solution for a healthy ecosystem. We had to integrate this solution into one package. And they had to be sustainable, because that's in the title. So we had to, since we were at it, we also had to be this solution was to be a solid scientific foundation. And we quickly realized that in this project, we had to merge ecology, we had to integrate sociology, geography, urban planning, sustainability. We had a variety of different disciplines that we had to integrate to create this viable urban solutions. We had to kind of produce this platform that was able to recognize the problems that there were and find integrated solutions for these issues. This is when I come in. This is where I started considering that maybe this was a bit too much of a big task and I should resign. And instead, just give up, don't even start, don't even try doing this. No, I'm joking. This is actually when COVID started. That was not welcome crisis, I would say. The kickoff on March 3rd was the first and last meeting in real life we had for 2 years. So this project has occurred remotely for all this time. But COVID made us think, really made me think. It made me think that what we were trying to achieve was actually really theoretically like good. There was a framework behind. See, with COVID, the health of a single individual was affected by the health of the community. The health of the community was affected by the health of the global population. The health of the global population had been affected by the health of a pendulum in a Chinese food market. So the health of the people were affected by the health of animals, and the health of animals had always been affected by the unhealthy conditions of their natural habitats. And this framework is the one that kind of supports the big project. This framework is called by the World Health Organization One Health, meaning that the health of humans, animals, plants, and wider environment are closely linked and interdependent. And this is the kind of integration we were trying to identify with the big project. This is what we were after. We were after the synergies between healthy people, healthy communities, and healthy ecosystems. People, communities, and ecosystems. This is what we were trying to really do. We chose a case study, which unsurprisingly is Gävle. And not only the city of Gävle, but also the people of Gävle. And then we started giving a name, a title to this project that was a bit more reasonable, I would say. At least something that was English. Better life quality with integrated geodata. That's what we wanted to achieve. We wanted to improve the life quality with the geodata that was available, integrating the geodata that was available, and integrating this data into solutions. So we had a framework, we had a vision, we were home in front of the computers. The only issue is that there has never been a study that has done this before. There has never been a study that has integrated individual health, social health, community health, and ecological health in one go. Nobody's been kind of crazy enough to do that. So we had to create the research design. We had to create the platform that allowed us to collect the data ourselves. And this is where we started creating our research infrastructure, our research platform. So after 15 months, together with Andreas, together with Magnus, together with a lot of other people in the project, we created a connection. We created a smartphone application. It's called MyGävle, and we created the connection between the smartphone application and the Garmin Vivo Smart 4. These devices that allow us to use the sensors that they have on their back. And what I will show you now is not necessarily. I don't go into the details of the data that we have collected. I let the researchers after me doing that go into a bit more details. I just want to give you the big picture of the big project, okay? So what we've done with this research infrastructure is use this for 15 months. And we recruited a sample of the population of Gävle from 15 years old to 79 years old. We recruited around 300 people that downloaded the app and used the app, and we gave away 150 watches. People use the watch as well. And I'm going to tell you now what this app does, what this research infrastructure does. So the data that we have collected. The first thing that the app does is track participants' GPS locations. We know where people go. And this is one of the biggest research gap in this kind of literature, because actual exposure to nature experiences or actual exposure to something that makes you healthy or something that makes you unhealthy is extremely rare to find in the literature, because there are not many people going around with a GPS tracker for such a long time. So we did that. And our points that are fairly accurate. So we have 90% of the points that we have collected are narrow to less than 25 meters. And we have a good understanding of where people go. So we have about 8 hours of daytime coverage of these people. We're able to understand how people are exposed to the environment. And not only how people kind of are exposed, but also how they interact. We give the possibility to people to report their experiences of the landscape. We give the possibility to people to give us their subjective interpretation of what is out there. Every week, these people, the participants, are asked to report an experience, a positive or a negative experience. And then we ask them to characterize the experience by the amount of nature there is, the amount of people, and the built environment. And we want to know if these experiences is influencing them in a positive way. Is influencing their quality of life, is influencing their health, is influencing their belonging to the community. We try to understand what's the subjective perception of the landscape. And you see these experiences are everywhere. These are some of the results, but you can see that they exist everywhere. They're mostly positive, but they exist everywhere. We ask them to do a small survey every season, also to understand, to have a baseline, to understand if these people think they're healthy or not, if these people think they are engaged with their community or not. And so in 15 months, we've done 5 of these surveys. And then ultimately, we have the watch. So the watch give us the data, give us all the biometric data that Garmin collects, but also, and importantly, give us the heart rate variability of these people. And the heart rate variability is an indicator of recovery rates, an indicator of fitness performance. It's an indicator of overall health of your nervous system. Now, all this information is now in a preprint. So this is the research side of it. We are starting to publish this information, but what I can tell you is that this data collection ends today. It ends in December 2022, and we'll just give away some of the prizes to the participants. And I would say that the data is collected is rather unique because all this data has as the common denominator space. We know where people go. We know how they interpret, these people interpret subjectively that environment. And we know their heart rate variability in that location at that time. So we have the ability to merge all this information, all this data into a spatial temporal information, into something that can tell us how these people feel and how these people react to this environment. We have data about individual health for every point in time and space. We have data about ecological health, and Nancy will show you a bit more about that. And we have data about community health, because that's what we ask in the experiences and the experience survey and in the baseline. Now we just need to put it together. But this is the this is the research infrastructure that I want to present you. This is the research infrastructure that didn't exist before. This is the research infrastructure that kind of made me wobble sometimes because it was rather difficult to conceive and rather difficult to just create, really. But now we have all the data. We have the data to answer, we actually have the data to answer this question. We have the data to identify these synergies, where these synergies exist in Gävle. And ideally, we have the data to identify these synergies, identify these places, and replicate these places. Or identify where a place doesn't support a healthy person or a healthy community, or doesn't have a healthy ecosystem. So we know what we can improve and where. So I would say that overall, we have done what we were supposed to do. Okay. We have created a big data methodology for an experience-based and cognitively sustainable urban growth. We started to create a solid scientific foundation to integrate all these desirable outcomes into solutions. Because if we want to create a sustainable and healthy future, we need to understand what makes people healthy, what makes community healthy, and what makes an ecosystem healthy. If you take away even one of these pillars, there's really not a sustainable and healthy future. So I believe that, I believe that the big project kind of lived up to its name, to at least create a research infrastructure that allow us to improve, to create a better life quality with integrated geodata. And I think Henrik mentioned before that this project started from GeoLife, from a big Vinnova project called GeoLife. And what we did here was to move from GeoLife to MyLife. It's not only the spatial dimension that is relevant to this project, but is the individual perception, is the individual dimension that is also taken into consideration, the individual with its age, with its gender, with his home location, with his preferences, with his experience of the environment. It's not only space, we take a much more complex and holistic vision of how health is generated. Now, obviously, together with all this information, you need to have some spatial analysis, right? So we know where people go, we know where, we know how they feel, we know how they experience the environment, but we do need what there is, what kind of space there is. And that's, why we've been working together with Nancy and others at the GIS department. We've been working together with the Swedish Meteorological Hydrological Institute as well, to have the possibility to map temperature and air pollution and noise pollution, etc. But ultimately, what we really wanted to achieve was what we really wanted to know was the ecological health. And I think Nancy will show you that right now. And I will stop talking. I think I talked a lot already. Okay.
Hello, and my name is Nancy, and I am a lecturer at the University of Gävle. And now I'll be presenting to you the ecological health map. And this is one of the products or the results that we have gotten from the BIG project. And the main contribution of the BIG project here is the methodology of producing this map and also this resulting map. And as what you can see in this map, this is an aerial photo or an orthophoto of Gävle, and this is the produced health map. And this is a rating. This has a rating, which is the color there, according to how ecologically healthy is our landscape. The greener the color, the higher the ecological status of that. And in order to produce that map, we have combined different aspects. So there are a lot more into this map here when we try to produce them. We accounted 3 important aspects here into this one. The first one is the amount of ecosystem services that we can derive from our landscape. And these ecosystem services are the benefits that we get from our ecosystem, from our environment in terms of those 4 services here. provisioning, regulating, supporting, and cultural services. So this is the output map, the first main map that consisted that ecological health map. But aside from that one, we also considered how biodiverse our landscape. And this has accounted for the number of species and also the species density into those different areas that we have. So this is basically based on plants and animal species that we accounted for. And this was based from ArtPortalen's data from 2015 to 2020. So there are a lot of data that has been used to create this particular map. And the third aspect is those primary ecosystem areas. These are the main habitats that we foresee are very much important for our environment. And we have identified this into three classes: middle forest, broadleaf forest, and wetlands. And based on these three classes, we have tried to look at the spatial configuration of these different habitat types. And by understanding those spatial configuration or the structure of those different habitats, we will be able to assess also the functionality of those habitats, whether they are able to support more species, and also if they are not able to support those species. And these are spatial matrices that we have applied here, are both on the structural and also knowing the connectivity of those different habitats from each other. So when we combine these three, we have produced that ecological health map. But another type of result that we have gotten for the big project is this map of trees. And this is mapping individual stand of trees that we have in Gävle based on laser scanning data. And aside from mapping the individual stand, we also got those heights of trees and also try to measure their canopies and an estimation of those canopies. And you can see here a small part of the result that we have here. Those dots there are the trees that we have mapped. And here is a visualization of those trees according to their heights. And also another visualization here of those trees in relation to the different buildings that we have in Gävle. So those are some of the things that we have produced for the big project. Kalle, maybe here's the next one.
Yes, so we are, me and Nancy, we are switching places here a little bit. And Nancy will come back and show you a little bit more results in just a moment, but I will say something about subjective place experiences first and introduce that side of the data also. So now we're going back to the app, MyGävle again. And Matteo showed you how it works. But just a little bit of recap. In this app, we have place-based surveys. When you open the app, you see a map of which is centered around your current position, and you mark a place on that map where you have recently been. You can see the places that you have currently been to, and then you answer a short survey related to this experience. And in that survey, some of the questions that we ask relate to the amount of buildings and built infrastructure in the place, and your perceived influence of that level of buildings and built infrastructure. And the same for nature, how much nature there is in the place, and the perceived influence of that level of nature. And lastly, how many other people there are there, and the perceived influence of that. And the perceived influence here, it can be positive or negative. So all of these questions are rated by the participants on a scale from 1 to 7. So 1 means very little and 7 means a lot. Or we also have for these influence questions, 1 means very negative and 7 means very positive. And based on these questions, the answer to these questions, I should say, we can make a classification of the different kinds of experiences that people have in Gävle. And here we have, this is a visualization just of the positive experiences, where we have 4 different types of experiences that are classified based on the answers that people have provided. So these 4 classes are the urban experiences. The urban experiences is the top row here, and you see that it's quite high values on built features and quite high values on people, but not on nature. Then you have nature experiences, and it's the other way around. There's a lot of nature and a very positive perception of that nature. And then we have a category that we call urban nature experiences, which combines these 2. And then we have other experiences which are kind of not that defined by either built features, nature, or people. Then, of course, we also had the negative experiences, the bad experiences. But we found that we had not that many bad experiences actually in our survey. A lot more good experiences, which is nice to see. So we didn't do any, for this presentation now, I won't show you any further classification of the bad ones. So the numbers here show, they tell you how many we have in each class with this classification. About 1,000 urban experiences, 1,700 nature experiences, about 700 that have both of these urban nature experiences, and about 1,500 other experiences, and about 800 bad experiences. I can show you some spatial distribution of these categories. So these are heat maps that show you where, if we zoom in on central Gävle, where we have most of these different categories. Of course, they are all over the landscape, the whole municipality, as Matteo said, but here is just a zoom-in picture. And we see, if we compare, for example, the urban experiences and the bad experiences, they are very much in the same areas, right in the city center, but the bad experiences also tend to extend a little bit further south. Urban nature experiences are quite a lot in the city center, but also the highest concentration to the west in Bologna-Skogen. And nature experiences, we also see a high concentration there, and not so much in the city center, but also in Henrik Dahl. There are a lot of different things we can find out with this data. So I will show you a little bit more of what we can do. For example, if we want to know how far from home are these different types of experiences, we can measure that by using something called OpenStreetMap, and we measure the walking distance or the biking distance or driving distance from the home to these experiences. And when we did this, we found that urban experiences and urban nature experiences are the ones that tend to be furthest from the home. On average, 5.8 and 5.7 kilometers. Interestingly, the closest ones by far are the bad experiences, 3.4 kilometers from home on average. And we can even see, we can look at the same person that has marked many different experiences and compare the same person's distances. So this is what we call a within-person analysis. That's it, that the same person tends to mark bad experiences much closer to home than other types of experiences also. So this gives us a good good evidence for that. The bad experiences really happen closer to home. The last piece of analysis that I will show you relates to the modes of transports connected to these different experiences also. And what modes of transports are used in these places? Well, this is the beautiful thing about having spatial-temporal data, both with a spatial coordinate and a timestamp. So we know when they have answered the survey, and what point they marked. And we can go to the GPS data and see, going back 2 weeks in time, and drawing a buffer of 50 meters around this experience, what were the modes of transport that they used when they crossed this area? And this image here is illustrating that. And we can see, is it a lot of walking or biking, what we call active mode of transport, or is it a lot of motorized transport, like going in a car or in a bus? And when we do this analysis, we see that nature experiences are the ones that are most associated with active travel. So you have numbers here that are about 60–70%. Whereas negative experiences are the ones that are most associated with motorized travel. The red ones here, much lower values, around 40–50%, something like that. So this is just to give you like an overview of what we can do with this kind of data, and I have by no means like exhausted the possibilities of what we can do with this presentation, but I hope it gives you a bit of an overview. And then Nancy is going to come back up to talk a little bit more about how potentially we can also combine these different data sources.
Mhm. So these clusters of nature experiences and experiences of unsafety can be analyzed, for instance, to understand how different factors can affect them. For example, the spatial configuration of our city or the status of our environment. And here we have gotten or we use these preliminary results from the respondents' answer here to identify where respondents have those positive, the most positive nature experiences. And you see those small polygons here. They are concentrated here in Bologna, the most positive one. With the blue here in Bologna Stugan and some varying degrees of positive experiences. And also in this parts of Gävle City and Gävle Strand. And here we're trying also to understand the ecological health status of these areas in relation to the ecological health map that we produce. So the background map here is the ecological health status map. And you can see here, those green areas are the ones with high ecological health status. And we can visually see also here that both Henrik and Bologna's Krugen have high ecological health status compared to these areas here. But if we will try to look at closely to, for instance, to this area, Bologna Student, those different polygons with varying degrees of experiences, we can see that highest experiences or experience was there somewhere in the middle there. And they're classified to have quite good high ecological health status in this area. And if we'll try to visualize this with a map of trees, we can see how green the entire area is. And we can contrast this, for instance, to how it looks like in the city center and also to the part of Gävle Strand, which is not so much green, quite low ecological status in this part. And this is how it looks like with those trees that we have. Another thing that we have tried to look at or relate the results that we have gotten from the survey is this cluster of unsafety experiences. And we have this map that shows where respondents had identified where they have this negative experiences. And this is the most negative experience, followed by this one and followed by those colors here that you can see. And we have used here the crime data to try to understand how it can be related to the occurrences of crime that we have here in Gävle. And we have used this crime data from the police that we have gotten. And these are all filtered from other crimes that we have from 2015 to 2020. And this is what we're using. I'm using it with ASIPA in the current research that we're doing. And based on the occurrences of a crime, we have tried to produce this hotspot heat map showing where it has been reported quite a lot of crimes in this area. And you can see the red part here, which is a hotspot. So the question is, can we relate these negative experiences with such occurrences of crimes there in that area? What is happening in those locations? And this is also important when we're trying to understand this feeling of unsafety, the physical environment, trying to understand the physical environment itself. So here, for instance, how it looks like in those areas, the small dots there that you see are the individual crime occurrences happened during nighttime, the blue ones, and daytime during day. So those are the spread of crimes there. It is possible that in one dot there are several reported crimes that had been reported. Gävle City and Gävle Central, the central station and the ones there on the other side going under the tunnel. And then here is the city center, quite close to Milan. And then we also have one area here that is in Södra Kungsgatan, and that is Fordham School there. That is reported also to be cluster of unsafe experience. And if we were trying to understand not just with the presence of the buildings, but also with how it looks like there, how the field of vision of people looking at those areas, particularly if there are some presence of vegetation that can affect those sites there. So we try to visualize it as well, these areas with the trees and vegetation. And one can also look at it with the entire spatial configuration of those areas to understand what had contributed mostly to the presence of crime and also to those negative experiences that we have.
But did you think about a disaggregation by type of crime?
Yeah.
Crime could be negative.
Yes, we have. That will become, yeah, I know. Because with that one, we have quite a lot of data here. We haven't filtered this one. We have just shown the occurrence of crime. But this is coming into the study that we're doing. Yeah. Because the crimes vary also, the different types of crime there. Mm-hmm. And
Other questions?
Yeah.
Yes, I was thinking, for how long does the bad experience last? You have that sort of idea and a good experience also. I mean,
that can be very subjective from person to person.
I can say something. I think we haven't looked at that in this data set yet. It's something we can do. But from earlier research that we've done in Stockholm, we know that negative experiences tend to happen much more frequently and shorter time period.
Yeah.
And positive experiences happen less frequently, but for a longer period of time, maybe once a week, but for an hour or 2 hours, something like that. And we see these similar patterns, I would say, here, because the negative experiences tend to happen on more days in Gävle, or that they are in the places where the negative experiences happen more often, on more days. For how long they are in those places is not something that we have looked at yet, but that's a good hypothesis. I think that it's also more often, but for shorter periods of time. Yeah. But that's
can you correlate it also to the watch?
That's definitely something we want to.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you. Brilliant. So next up is Tarina. one of the PhD's future-proof city.
Indeed, yes.
Welcome.
Yes, so my name is Evelina Levin, and I am here to tell you about how I can use the big data in my PhD project. But first I will tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm an industrial PhD student within the research school Future-Proof Cities, and I'm also enrolled at Sustainability Science at the University of Gävle. And I'm also working 20% at the municipality of Gävle at the Comprehensive Planning Department, where Viveka Solén is my mentor. Stefan Sjöberg may be listening, maybe not. He is my main supervisor, and Stefan Bartell, my co-supervisor. And the PhD I'm working on is investigating how urban form, so physical urban planning and design, can support or hinder social sustainability. And I will use the data from BIG to analyze how the landscape of Gävle supports different kinds of social sustainability aspects. And what we have done until now is to investigate what these social sustainability aspects actually are. Then departing from a common assumption that the concept of social sustainability is fuzzy and under-theorized and maybe even disputed. So let's see, wait, sorry, I was still there. Yes, so I will tell you a little bit about the conclusions that we have for now. They are tentative, but that's so you can understand from which point of departure this research project will continue and how we, in that context, will use the big data. So here you can see our tentative results of themes which consistently over time have been used as very important or like core concepts within the concept of social sustainability. So it's distributional issues, which concerns how to achieve a just distribution of different kinds of benefits and ills. It's the fulfillment of needs and the support of well-being, from poverty mitigation to the support of healthy lifestyles. It also concerns the building of functional social networks and relationships in terms of institutions and also on an individual level, so between people. It concerns participation, which strongly relates to distribution, but particularly regards the distribution of power. Is then to benefit justice, but also diversity of perspectives and knowledge. And finally, in relation to that, knowledge and the capacity to learn. Both as an individual and as a society, to increase participatory capacities, to increase the representation in participatory processes, facilitate social mobility, and support and develop transformative capacity, the transformative capacity of society. And relating to all of the above mentioned aspects is an additional point, namely the holistic consideration for spatio-temporal scales. Which basically means that something cannot be socially sustainable here if it causes damage elsewhere or in the future. And this understanding of social sustainability has been developed by doing a systematic literature review and a discourse analysis by my colleague Caroline Nilsson I, and also Karl Samuelsson, Stefan Bartell, Johan Kolding, and Stefan Sjöberg. I hope I didn't forget anyone, but I don't think so. And we have also investigated how urban form is dealt with within the social sustainability discourse and found that the same aspects are present, but that very little attention is given to the consideration for spatial-temporal scales. We also found another important aspect that the way we perceive how our preferences of urban form is shaped is basically dependent upon how we are taught, so environmental aspects, which results in our preferences for urban form to be very contextual. We cannot present the recipe for good urban form at one place and then transform it to another place. And with this view, physical design per se doesn't really matter, but instead it's the process of developing it, then including the impacted users and truly considering their opinions, which matters. And without at all disputing the importance of participatory processes, the assumption that environmental preferences or the preferences, the urban form preferences, are only taught is problematic for several reasons, but particularly because we don't know that that is the case. We don't know to which extent our environmental preferences are taught and individual and to which extent they are inherited and thereby also collective. And within most other fields, it's completely accepted that human thoughts, emotions, preferences, and behaviors are results of both environmental factors and genetics. But for some reason, that is not the case within urban form and other kinds of aesthetics. So since this is a project which focuses on the physical aspects of urban form and how that urban form supports and hinders social sustainability, we will try to investigate this further by using data from BIG to test two existing urban form theories underlining humans' common experiences of and behaviors within urban space, both of which are also associated with different aspects of social sustainability. So firstly, we will focus on the theory of Christopher Alexander regarding living structure, which is a theory that assumes aesthetic preferences, including urban space or urban form, to mainly be inherited and spring from an idea of humans, some sort of foundational love for life. And he has also developed design principles that are supposed to imitate the physical qualities of life. And yes, and this theory is connected to or is associated with the well-being, social relationships, and networks for that reason. And then we will also work on or look at this theory of space syntax, which tries to understand humans' common behavior in space as something which is dependent on space itself. And it regards spatial integration and access to a high degree, which means that it's connected to distribution and also social relationships and networks and knowledge and learning, because it has to do with how we learn new behaviors by observing others. And you can use methods from this theory to promote meetings between people and also exposure towards different kinds of elements. And we will investigate this by trying to answer almost these research questions, but not quite. So the first one should probably be something like, how does the degree of living structure impact associated aspects of social sustainability? And with concern to the space syntax, how does different levels of street network integration, which is a measure used in that theory, impact associated aspects of social sustainability? And to answer these questions, we will analyze Gävle's landscape according to each of these theories and map the landscape. With regards to street network, for the first question, also typology of building complexes. And then compare the resulting mappings with the BIG's data, both the experiential data, to see how the mapping of each theory correlates with positive and negative experiences and to understand if they promote well-being or not. And then also the seasonal survey data of social capital, for instance, concerning trust towards neighbors and institutions. And what I hope that this will result in is for the municipality practical knowledge on how social sustainability is promoted or hindered by the urban form of Gävle, to of course give some sort of guidance for future interventions and development here in Gävle. It does not have to be related to the theory per se, but perhaps correlations between trust and certain types of building structures. And from a scientific perspective, I hope that this project can improve our understanding of how and if the mentioned theories can be used to benefit socially sustainable urban landscapes overall. And that's all for me. Thank you.
All right. I wonder what next slide will say. Break and mingle. So yeah. I said Italian, but we can't go full Italian, so we need Swedish fika. So there's going to be cinnamon bun and coffee out there. And we meet here because many of you haven't met before, so we're going to take a lot of time to socialize. So 1:30, we'll be back in this room. Brilliant. Så den
This, but there are a few. Oh no, there are like 5.
Det skulle vara
Ja, bara lite bra. Sen har jag sökt mer pengar. Och de som anställt en tvärtom har de flyttat på nu för att jobba med inhouse. Jag vet inte vad det blir. Och den, ja, så har de tagit halva den tjänsten har de flyttat i inhouse och lagt på flyttat. Där sitter en automatgivare och jobbade tidiga skeden när energiintresseret. De liksom bygger upp någon form av slussar inom energistål. Jobbar med energiintresseret. Få ner det lite smalare så att det blir verksamt. Och då har de tagit fram inom ett utskott som har tagit fram en metodik som heter hitta. Så det är det, har de tagit in 15 stycken som helt enkelt får genomgå en hitta-pass som de har tagit med. Så då får de börja på botten och så gör de här, det kan vara nattvandring, det kan vara ställverkprodukter och så. Då är det inventering. Och sen går de där 5 kontaktstegen så har de verkligen då ja, tänkte att vi går in på Gävle kommun, stadshuset. Vilka standardprodukter finns det? Vilka lampor släcks inte? Varför har vi inte släckt av? Exempelvis. Hur är ventilationen? Hur mycket går den för full hals just nu? Varför är den det? Ja, gör en nattvandring. Precis, ja. Så det här har de precis nu byggt upp och lanserat bra. Eller för framtiden. Och det är ju
Hej.
Kommer jag till prisceremonin här?
Nej, det blir ingen med idag.
Det blir ingen prisceremoni.
Nej.
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 Okej, jag såg det i programmet.
Ja, jo, det var originalprogrammet.
Vad blir det nu då, 14.30?
Precis, då blir det lite från världen utanför akademin kan man säga.
Jaha,
Det finns en sån också.
gör det? Wow. Spännande.
Kanske blir lite repetitivt för dig möjligtvis då, men
Jaha.
det är nog lugnt.
Från det som var i morse menar du?
Ja, kanske lite. Det kommer nog anknyta ganska mycket till det Daniel pratade om tidigare.
Jag får se, jag hänger på den här timmen i alla fall. Det är någon som säger något djupt. Är det fullt nu också eller? Är det fullt? Det ser ut som det är hyfsat med kläder här.
Nancy, did you speak English? Did you make your presentation in English?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. All of them are.
Yes.
Ja, då måste vi köra.
Kanske någon annan lägger mina bilder. Ja.
Bra. Det är komplext. Mycket. Ja, det är så.
Det är folk som inte förstår.
Det är jättemånga här.
Som inte förstår svenska.
Ja.
Men då är...
Matteo till exempel.
Jo, men alltså, han hade skickat. Jag vet inte, han fattar svenska, men han orkar inte skriva, tänkte jag.
Jaha.
Så det var bara så. Det var ingen som sa att det kommer att bli. Men det var ju så när jag tittade på agendan. Så jag kan inte vad som jag ska prata engelska, men det var 5-tal.
Wing it.
Det var.
Wing it.
Jag har gått
Träna lite på mig framtida uppdrag då.
Ja.
All right, welcome back. I hope you got some coffee and feel energized now with some Swedish fika. The next part of this session will be a little bit more about what's outside of academia, and hopefully we will find out how big could play a big role in the future. And at some point we will stop calling it big, we call it something else. But before we can do so, we need to know a little bit more about what's happening around us. And I'm glad to have Evelina Loberg here from the Gävle municipality here. And she's going to talk a little bit about viable cities and the 100 climate neutral cities.
Yes,
Hopefully. Thank you. Welcome.
thank you. I'm sorry that my presentation is in Swedish pictures. I just realized 5 to 12 today that it might be in English, this. But then it was a little bit too late for that. So anyway, Gävle is, I'm by the way an environment strategist at the municipality, and I'm responsible to reach the climate goals of the municipality. So that's my job. And to do so, we have applied to be part of the Swedish the Viable Cities, who is a strategical innovation program, where 23 cities in Sweden are going to be forerunners to reach the climate goals already to 2030. And yeah, so firstly, we managed to be part of that. And secondly, then we applied also to be part of the European initiative that they call Net Zero Cities or 100 Climate Neutral Cities. And also there we were successful. So now we're part of these two initiatives, but they have the same goal, that we're going to be climate neutral to 2030. And also the European initiative is inspired by the Swedish initiative. So they have a little bit of the same take on it. Only that Europe, of course, make everything much more complicated for us because that's how they do things. It's not supposed to be easy. I think it's their main goal. But I'm going to talk a bit about the digitalization connected to this a little bit, since everybody who knows me knows I'm an expert on digitalization. Everybody has to help me with everything. That's a good idea. So that's why I thought I was so well suited to talk about this too. And Viable Cities, here we work together with the national authorities to reach the goals. And that's different from European initiative, because there we don't do that. And the national authorities also signed the climate contract, which we do every year. And tomorrow is actually the first time that Gävle will sign its contracts in Stockholm. So it's going to be a big celebration to do that. And what we do then is that we work together to solve difficult issues when it comes to climate neutrality. And many times we have a lot of hurdles that are connected to national authorities. It can be rules, legislation and stuff that needs to be solved. And now when we're sitting around the same table with the national authorities, we realize that they don't have a clue how it is to work on a local scale in a municipality if they haven't done that before. So it's very good that our realities meet, so they get a feeling for how they actually need to design their rules and how they distribute money and stuff. So to suit what we need to do locally. And yeah, in the climate contract that we're going to write every year, they have the content of it is we have to write about how we will reach, what kind of goals we have locally, and what kind of strategy we have to reach the goals. I'm not going to read more, but one important issue is also how we use digitalization to reach our goals. And when I was writing this year, I realized how little we do with this at the moment, and that we have a far road ahead of us to integrate digitalization to actually use the full potential there.
Okay, stick in.
Yeah.
You and I were at the conference.
Yes.
Where the specific topic was this: how the municipalities will be able to use digitalization in order to reach the goals. And what they were specifically interested in is to get the
starting to cooperate with the rest of the municipality and with the universities, and also being connected to this kind of initiative that this is. And also, best of all, would be if that department could sign a contract.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, the time in Stockholm was first time for me when I actually could see the full potential of this. And then we're only talking about energy efficiency and that small area, but still the huge potential with using sensoring and stuff was amazing. So yeah, you're right. We need to involve them much more because people like me are not educated in that sort of things and will not be able to push it through.
Politicians can help.
Politicians. Yes, we look at Jan. You fix that. Yeah, the net zero cities, they go a little bit more in depth with helping us in the methodology how to reach climate neutrality. So they have developed this transition map where they have in very detail designed all the steps how we are going to do this. And also it revolves around a climate contract. But here we have to sign it together with local actors. So they want us to talk to academia, to companies, and to other organizations to be part of this. And also to sign it that we are also going to be climate neutral until 2030. So that's where now my colleague left who has that on his table. And also to connect to Tarina's talk, I want to say that they are very focused on that we have a just and fair climate transition, because otherwise it will not be possible if people don't feel that they are equally treated and if some people are left out of it and disadvantaged. So we also always have to keep that in mind when we design the transition road. And I was also going to say that we, at the moment, the only digital tool that we use in Gävle is the climate iOS, which it is a platform where we can monitor the data for our emissions. So we know what emissions we have at the moment. And we can also create a roadmap to 2030. And it can tell us if we increase biking to its full potential, how much will then the CO2 be reduced? And we can play around with different scenarios to see then. Okay, so if we're only going to go for electric cars, how will that then turn out? How much will we decrease? And also the next step, next year, we're going to work with climate investment plans, and we're going to see then how much investments and who needs to do these investments to reach the goals. For instance, if we only go for electrification of cars and we don't do much with biking or public transport, I think the cost will be much higher for infrastructure for cars. So we have to take that in mind too. And this is the Bible cities, they say that we have to focus on 3 areas to make this transition possible. And the first one they mention is actually digitalization and how that can be integrated in everything to reduce emissions. The second is then how can citizens be part and design the transformation. And also the lastly then, where do we find and mobilize the investments that are needed to do this? So this we always try to keep in mind when we design a roadmap. I want to say that about digitalization is that you always have to think about it to go, it's not vertical, but it's horizontal. It has to go through all the areas that we are working with. We work with lifestyle and consumption, planning and built environment, mobility and accessibility, and integrated infrastructure. But in all these areas, digitalization can play a quite big part to reduce emissions. And so I think that would be exciting to work with this on the other cities. Because now when we work with the other cities in Europe, we realize that they have very different way of organizing their countries. The municipalities are differently organized. So it's difficult to take something that they have done and apply it here. But when it comes to digitalization, it's quite universal. So there, I think we have a lot of potential to work together on digitalized tools. So that would be one area I would address within this mission. So my spaning, yeah, what's that? How is that in English? What I see in front of me is that the potential here is huge, and we are just in the beginning of using it. Also, when I look at the 100 Climate Neutral website, there's almost nothing about digitalization. All the learning documents that they published does not contain this. So I think even them need to learn that this is going to be important. And I think it's going to be booming the coming 10 years. And how we use like big and that kind of data also will be important. And also that it takes a lot of time for municipalities to integrate this when we don't have a culture to work with it. So that is also a challenge ahead of us. And I think my time might be far past the time. But thank you. I stop there. Any questions?
Do we have any questions for the municipality? Yeah.
Some concerns that they have collecting all this data and we basically pay without private information.
Yeah, probably. I'm not the person to answer that, but yeah, it could probably be a problem.
How do you foresee that you could use the big database in reaching, let's say, your biking target, or get citizens involved in designing the transformation process?
Yeah, I think you were giving me the answer outside just a few minutes ago. Yeah, I don't have the answer to that, but I think that together with HIG, with the university, we can work on that. Yeah, absolutely, because we need to reach out and have the data that proves what citizens actually think. Because what a few old men write in the newspaper is not very representative, but still we are much worried about that. Yeah.
I have a question, Evelina.
Yeah.
Do you think that the municipality, well, it's a large organization, but if we look at your part of the organization, actually understands the potential in this, or is it considered like a pure research project? Or are we in between?
I'm not sure if I dare to answer that, but I think the latter, unfortunately.
But then
Yeah.
I think it's also a good message to the people representing the municipality to take it with you to your organization and maybe invite the researchers to the municipality as guests to present.
I think we need to be fed, spoon-fed with a lot of information the coming time, and then it will start rolling. But you need that food. Just sending reports is not going to help. So we really need to hear it. Yeah. And that's the thing I realized when I went to Henrik with Stockholm. My point was to go to something where I actually knew nothing about, and that's the place where you actually learn new stuff and you can combine it with your own experience. That's where new thinking evolves. So I think that's, we should think more, go to other things outside our boxes more often, and yeah.
Okay, tack så mycket, Evelina. And next speaker we have, where are you? There, Magnus. This is a former colleague at FBX and one of the people actually, I would say, responsible for that we came this far in the digital platform work. And I'm not going to introduce what Magnus is going to talk about, because I often notice that the title of something Magnus is going to talk about often ends up being a little bit different and maybe from another perspective. So the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. That's also an introduction. So I actually didn't realize I was supposed to speak here until very recently. I do have things to say about the project, and I haven't really prepared any slides, and even if I had the time to prepare slides, I don't know if I would like to use them. So I was gonna speak without slides. So you'll have to just kind of listen to me. But I do have some notes here. That's why I'm sitting here with my computer. So we could talk a lot about the history of the big project and the technical aspects of it, and also the user aspects of launching a project like the big project. But I figured that we kind of already have done that during the first hour. And also we're talking a bit about how this data is being used, reports being written, and insights being shared and so on. So I figured that I would use my 10 minutes to talk a little bit about looking forward. So kind of what I'm seeing going forward with the big project, and also kind of going forward this kind of type of data sets that we are collecting. So what I've written here on my computer is that we are using data to learn right now. So we do have a lot of insights, and we do have a lot of data that have been collected, very unique data, very few data sets available that can match the data sets that are being collected in the big project, meaning that we have some unique opportunities to learn as well. But learning also means that we can be reactive. We can do changes in society, and we can look at the data to understand what effect something has. So we can see, right, so we know that there have been changes in Gävle, and we can see in the data how those changes have affected the people living in the city. But what I would like to talk about for the remaining 8 minutes is using data to evaluate, basically being proactive, trying to think about where to go, and trying to use the data sets as means to understand if that is the right decision to take, if you should move in that direction or another direction. And I divided up in a few subjects. First of all, and the most obvious and easy one is interpolation. So we do have a lot of data that is collected that we know is true, or at least we know to some percentage that is true. We saw the numbers from Matteo saying that, right, we know that the heart rate data that's accurate to some percent, and we know that the GPS coordinates are accurate to some percent, and so on. But also the time that we're not collecting data, we do have granular data enough to understand what is happening during those periods. Like the easy one, once again, is trying to understand if we have GPS data and we see someone that have walked down a road, and we don't have GPS points for every single meter, every centimeter of that road, but we know that this person has probably been during the entire road. It didn't teleport from one GPS location to another, right? And I think the interpolation part is very important, because it's not only what's in the data, it's also what can be extracted from having that data. That's also a very important aspect. So the quality data that we have could probably be, you could probably extract tenfolds of data just by knowing that we have quality data. So that's one thing that I would like to mention, and there are countless possibilities of using that, because we know that even if we have gaps in data, we probably have enough data to learn how to fill in those gaps. Also predictions, and I guess this is where like machine learning or AI comes in. So we have a lot of historical data, and we know how the data shows us what happens up until now. But if you have enough data, historical data, then that data can also be used to tell us what is going to happen in the future. So if we know that people tends to move in certain ways, or if people have a certain experience from going somewhere, then we can probably predict that more people are going to have that experience forward, right? But that also means that if the data is granular enough and we have enough of the data, then we can also try to start predict what happens if we change something, if the environment changes, or if we close off a street, or if a street is open for traffic or closed for traffic and so on. That probably we could predict also what effect that will have on the people living in the environment that we are affecting. So I think the prediction is a very big part of this. I think that the data sets in the big projects are large enough and have enough quality to do real predictions. And that means that we could simulate different outcomes. And I think that is a very interesting way to move. Also, I wrote down planning, and of that course, basically the same thing. We should probably try to look at things that we know are going to change and see to what extent we do have the data to predict how those changes are going to affect people. For example, if we're going to build new housing at Näringen, for example, do we have insights in the big projects that can tell us a little bit more about how people are going to perceive that change in urban environments, for example. In the end, I think that what I'm trying to say is that I'm not a big fan of digital twins, because I think that is basically just trying to mirror data or mirrors things that we have today into data, and it's very tedious to keep those up to date, and it requires a lot of data. I'm not saying that I'm proposing building digital twins. I'm proposing to learn how to use the data to do predictions that are right for the specific projects that we're trying to do, right? Not keeping data in a silo just for having that data. Trying to understand how, when we encounter something that we need to make a decision about, how do we use the data to make that decision? And that is a completely other process than setting up a data, digital twin or something like that. We don't need big databases. We need a process for understanding how to extract the value from the data that we have. And also, I feel that I've actually, I think I have 1 minute left. And also, I think that as a citizen in Gävle, what I'm trying to, the way I look at this is that being represented in the data set and having my experiences represented in the data set, it kind of gives me agency in how the city will form going forward, right? So me being a part of the big data survey and adding my data and my experiences into this data set, that's my agency in how to affect how Gävle is going to form going forward. So I think that to some extent that MyGävle is a user product, not only as I can use the data for me personally to look where I've been and how I experience things and so on. It's also kind of my interface towards Gävle as how Gävle is going to be formed going forward. But that kind of depends on how this project manages to extract the values out of the data. So if you look at this in several steps, I guess this the people connected to the big project that is really responsible for giving me that agency as a citizen or a user. Right. I think that was my kind of last point. Thank you.
We have somebody that is not here at the moment. The next speaker is Pau Garcia from the Domestic Data Streamer, which is an organization in Barcelona, and he's currently in London, so he's not been able to come here and present, but he sent us a presentation, a video of who is and what he does and why he's linked and he wants to be linked to the big project. And you obviously don't see that here. Let's see if we can move it manually. Oh, that worked. Technical issues. Sorry. Let's see if I can end this maybe. This should be much simpler than what it looks like. Let's see. No.
Hello everyone.
Oh.
Thanks for inviting me
Yeah.
to this talk.
Let's see. Well, I mean, it's the output speaker that is just my computer, really. So I can do that.
But if you have HDMI, it should go to the projector also for sound.
Or even if it's virtual.
It doesn't really. Let's see. Share the sound.
I'm Pau Garcia.
Yeah, but it's coming. Sorry for this break. You can.
No problem.
I'm gonna squash this. You need to wait a second. So we have this one. So we can take this away. Try to remove that one. Yeah, but this one's
I'm one of the founding partners of the
no. Can I just try? See what happens.
Everyone very quiet and we listen.
Data streamers, and today we will kind of show a bit of the work we do and see if we can find ways to collaborate together with the project you are working on now. So our studio is based in Barcelona. We are a team of 25 people coming from different disciplines, from journalism, data science, designers, coders, artists. So it's a bit of a weird mix. And our focus is mainly in 3 industries or 3 territories. The first of them, it's like cultural space. So we work a lot for museums like the Tate Modern, the Museum of the Future, Ars Electronica, and so on. very connected to the arts industry and how through art you can express information. Then the second one is more focused in institutions such as United Nations, and on all the small institutions that kind of drop from United Nations, like UNICEF, the UN Women, UNHCR, and so on. Then we work for some laboratories, like university laboratories, like Citizen Lab in Canada, and of course with NGOs and different foundations like Annalene or CAN, Community Arts Network. And then, of course, we had the more commercial kind of projects where we work for brands that are mainly somehow connected to the technological industry. And mainly I believe they work with us because we are very good at understanding technology and how to express it in a way that is accessible to everyone, right? So we work a lot with them, from like commercial venues to campaigns to spaces of dissemination of technology, right? And I may say that our main areas of research and fight is these two. Like the first one will be how to make people care about information in a moment that we are totally surrounded by data and data and data, more information, more news, and more stuff. How we make people care about something as specific as a scientific project, as a like social problematic, and so on. And the second one is how we find ways to build spaces of debate, spaces where people can not only see something and understand something, but actually be part of the conversation, right? And we truly believe this is important, as otherwise the people is only understood as an audience, and we think that we truly should like push up for understanding the audience as part of the conversation, even in science projects. And we do so by creating what we call info experiences. So going from like the standard infographics into something that really surrounds yourself and can be part of workshops, can be part of activities, exhibitions, and so on. So I will show you like 3 examples of how this can be achieved through like different media. And the first one is an exhibition that we did for the Fundación Telefónica, and it was a project about the idea of futures, right? And what we did here was a research on the idea of the semantic search of futures, right? So we started like looking up for like different papers and different resources that you can find online on how many people is looking for the word future on the internet, right? And we started like kind of gathering all this data to assess and show how the idea of future was becoming more and more important, right, through like the last 20, 30 years. And what we created was this installation that will transform all these searches into light, right? So you will arrive into this part of the exhibition where you will be able to actually see like dark installation that will be lightened up by the amount of searches. So we were creating like this kind of light infographic that will react upon the people arrival in there. Right? And it was interesting, and at the same time it was a way to tangibilize the information. And not only that, but it was a way also to create a space of discussion in front of this data, because whenever you transform information into something physical that occupies a space, people start having this space also to talk about this data, right? It's not like you're reading on your phone, but it's more like you are having the space like an agora for talking about this specific information, right? And the same happened with another project we did called Universal. It was a project that we did for the health department, and we were making like kind of a whole recap on the like health infrastructure in Catalonia during the last 30 years, as it was used as one of the case studies for the World Health Organization. And like on that direction, we started to experiment and said, well, if we need to explain what the health is, we need to like use a metaphor that really connects with everyone. Even if it's a very complex topic, we have to start from something very simple. And we look up from like different metaphors that we could use to actually talk about health, and we found that like this kind of experiment that Lozano Hemmer, an artist in Washington, was using at that point. And we said, what if we bring like this reflection of light on water to represent something that maybe is like the biggest metaphor of all times to represent health, that is the heartbeat, right? So what we created was a small sensor that we on the audience, when starting at the exhibition space, they will take the heartbeat of one person and it will transform it into a like global heartbeat in a room. So everyone in the room will be able to hear your heartbeat reflected on the walls and also through the sound. And it was like truly interesting to see how people reacted to their own heartbeat, but also it was interesting to see how people could actually see other people's heartbeats, right? So in this space, what we were doing was collecting all the heartbeats from all the people in the exhibition, and the message was somehow that this exhibition was about the collective heartbeat. If we want to talk about the collective health of a community, we wanted to actually collect this collective health heartbeat. And of course, we did like so many different physicalizations of data. We were like building up these spaces where people could see, for example, the reasons for visiting a doctor, and you will be able to see like all these test tubes with different amounts of liquid depending on the amount of requests from the doctors. Then we were using, like, of course, material from the hospital to show and visualize budget with transparency. We had like this space that was more kind of an acoustic installation where you will be able to hear different processes of the infrastructure. So, for example, a 112 call that is like the emergency phone number from Catalonia. So you will be able to hear like one like real call. Then in the next headphone, you will be able to hear the chopper going to rescue for a car accident. And every time you hear something, you will be able to see the data of the infrastructure necessary to make that happen. So it was kind of bringing up this connection between what we say that is like the more emotional and qualitative information and the more quantitative and rational information, right? So bridging like these two spaces. And of course, like examples of this, we can like use all kind of materiality, and it really makes a difference, like from building maps so you truly understand the cartography of something, and creating like this physical installation where people can actually be in awe of the amount of data that is necessary to collect something, to actually making like light installations and interactive installations where you discover through your interaction, right? And this can be very technological, or it can be very simple. An example of a very simple installation is the one called Antigona that we did in a very particular environment, but we have repeated it in several places. And the first time we did it, it was for the Modelo prison in Barcelona. And they opened this prison that for a long time has been in use, and it's quite in the city center. So it's a very, let's say, important symbolic prison in Catalonia, even because it was used during the dictatorship for political prisoners. And when they decided to open it to the audience, to the public, they moved all the prisoners, and they said, well, now it's part of the city hall, and we will transform it into music school and so on. And we said, well, before doing that, let's open it to the public, and let's have this space of assessment from the audience to actually say what they think about prisons, right? So we created this very simple installation, very low budget, where people will be able to like ask like different questions in each of the cells, taking a stone and placing it in a scale, right? So you will have a question and two potential answers, and depending on your answer, you will be actually creating this kind of infographic, participative infographic through it, right? And it was interesting, not by the visualization that we did, that was simple, but at the end we were creating like a mechanism that will make people reflect, think, and have a conversation about the importance of these questions, right? And at the end we were creating like, again, this agora, this space of discussion on justice, right? And I think it's one of the main and more important things that we work on right now. Last but not least, as I have short time, I wanted to introduce our last projects on artificial intelligence. As you may know, machine learning tools are taking over with the design industry, and we have been working a lot during the last 6 months in how to transform that into actually tools to visualize information. So we started working like in different prompt books for data lovers, and we have started to test like how we could, even in a digital environment, tangibilize some of the data that we have. So for example, explaining the global coral coverage in the last decade, or ice melting in Greenland, air pollution rank between countries. So of course, this like not as specific as a standard infographic, but what we are adding here is that more qualitative information that somehow speeds up the process of understanding from the audience, and also explains in a very kind of engaging and building curiosity on people what this information is truly about, right? So this is a bit all of it. Of course, we have much more projects, and we could discuss this over much more time, but I want to be short. Just to finish out, our focus of projects are on research, dissemination, and exhibitions, and of course we have all these disciplines working in it, and really we would love to participate of your project and find ways to collaborate. And that's it. Thank you very much, and hope this conversation goes further after this. Bye.
With Pau Garcia, we need to clap. But I think he did a good job, and you can see that this is it's the other side of this digitalization that you were talking about. Like we have created a digitalization of real life, and he is trying to recreate the real life out of data, recreate information out of data, which is extremely valuable, I believe, in my mind, to understand the value of, really understand the value of data. I will show again my screen, and that worked actually quite easily. We have the last speaker, which is me, and I am done with talking about what we have done, what was in the past, what we have created, and I really want to talk about the future. I'm going to Tenerife, so goodbye. I'm joking. I'm joking. That's in 2 days. Now, talking about the future, I wanted to refer to what Per was mentioning before. We call this the Big Bang. This event is not meant to be the end of the big project. This event is going to be the beginning of something else. We are creating sufficient noise and we're giving people sufficient information, sufficient inertia, sufficient discussion, hopefully, to create something new, get a new direction out of what we have done. We have today we have finished. I believe we have finished the pilot study of this project. We have finished the project in Gävle, and that was the validation of the methodology, making sure that what we have created has worked, and it does work. We have done an analysis of the quantity. We need to, what we need to understand now is, where is the value of this? What is the value of what we have done? And not only where is the value of BIG that we can harvest, but who benefits from it? And what kind of stakeholders should we involve? And I gave a thought about this. And I think there are three categories of people that would benefit from BIG. So there are three. BIG has created value for citizens, has created value for scientists, has created value for policymakers, and we can continue creating this value in the future. And I want to start with citizens, because I want to give you like specific examples of what I think and what my opinions are. This is what participants have said. We asked them what motivated you to participate in the study very recently. And they answered us that they want to be part of a research study. They want to contribute to the local community. They see the value in participating in a research project for the greater good. When I present BIG, people immediately talk about privacy issue. They immediately think that data can be used for commercialization, can be used to make money, can be used to make profit, can be used towards an unsustainable activity. And that is exactly what we're trying to go against. We collecting data to create a sustainable and healthy future. And people understand that. And people are very willing to give you that, to give you their data for this purpose. And we need to allow them to do so. This is not an option. The creation of big data at the moment is created purely for commercial purposes. You have businesses like Google, like Facebook, like Instagram, that are reliant on this business model, collecting information from you, providing you a free service, using this, using the data that you give them for target advertisement. That is the business model. We try to create a different business model here that is not based on commercialization, but is based on the creation of actual sustainable and health value. And people realize that. And also, it has to be easy. It has to be easy. People participate in the project because it wasn't very difficult to participate in the project. It was actually fun. It was easy to follow. Once they installed the app, potentially, and they wear a watch, they had nothing else to do. They didn't even need to answer the survey if they didn't want. We didn't ask them. We didn't pester them with notifications. We tried to create a technology that is able to follow people for very, very, very long time without their intervention, without being annoying. We basically try to use social media strategies to create research, create real academic, scientific, and potentially policy value. This is how they answered when we asked them about how demanding it was indeed. It wasn't very demanding. From 1 to 10, it was very, very little demanding. And it was not invasive, it was not intrusive in people's lives. And if we want to progress with this kind of methodology, if we want to progress and try to collect big data for people for a different purpose that is just commercialization, these are the kind of strategies that we need to push forward. It cannot be a burden for the participant. And because of that, I think we should also thank the participants. We had a lottery a few days ago where we gave away the prizes to the people, I mean, to some participants. We gave away like 5 electric bicycles and 10 coupons to go and spend some money in Gävle. But I also think that in order to show the value of the data they have created, we should have a big data exhibition. And this is why I got in contact with the domestic data streamers, because they can show the value of data in a physical form. They can show everybody the value of the data that we have collected. And I really would like to give the possibility to participants to not only remember that they've been part of this project, but I want to give them the possibility to show that they've contributed meaningfully to the development of something that is much bigger than themselves. So in the next 6-7 months, ideally, in a perfect world, this will materialize. The domestic data streamers are very happy to be part of this because they recognize the ethical and moral value of the data that we have collected. And if we manage to create, I mean, this exhibition based on the big data, we also create the possibilities for other stakeholders to understand the value that we created with big, and the value of the big data at large. And I think this would be like, probably quite a landmark moment for the community of Gävle. I don't know if you've ever had this kind of exhibitions here. So this is the first thing that I would propose. The second thing is obviously there is value for scientists. There is value for researchers. You've seen that. You've seen when Karl, Nancy, and Zifa and Tarina presented. This is a rather unique data set. Just the possibility of understanding the exposure to the natural experiences and the effect that this has on objective and subjective health. That is a rather unique possibility that we can have. But there is a small issue. So we can extract value from the data set that we have for academics, for the academic arena. There is a small issue here when it comes to replicating this study. Because if we want, well, we could replicate the study, but if we or other researchers want to replicate the study, then we need to create something that is a bit simpler. That doesn't demand Andreas spending 6 months of programming a survey or communicating with the participants using SQL code. We need to make something that is much, much easier. We need to create a product that other researchers and we can reuse. And this is the idea behind REALM. This stands for like real-time long-term methodology, and is also the title of the paper that we have prepared and submitted. And it is a methodology. What we're trying to do is try to allow researchers to recreate this study without the need to have an in-house programmer, which is extremely uncommon in research. Obviously, we face certain challenges. We face this challenge of keeping track of participants, keeping track of their socioeconomic characteristics, building a representative sample, message with them and receive message from them. We face certain challenges. And so what we're trying to do here is creating a digital platform that will allow to solve the challenges that we have faced for other participants. This is a draft of what we want to do, but ideally, this is a possibility for other researchers to monitor the activity that is happening, monitor the activity in how many participants there are, or who are the most active, or categorize them by age or gender, etc. Have an overview of what's actually happening, which is something that we missed. And the other essential component of this is the possibility of creating surveys. Surveys that are offline, do not require any form of internet communication, which is an issue that we have experienced, but also they don't require like programming skills. So we are working towards this. We are working towards building a two-way message system where we can get in contact directly with single participants, group of participants, and where participants can actually reply back. And I think this is essential. Like, this REALM platform is essential if we want to give other researchers the possibility of replicating the study that we have done, but also if we want to replicate a MyGävle 2.0 in Gävle, if we want to create something new, something different, have a different survey in it, we need this kind of platform, and this is what we're building actually until summer 2023. Last but not least, so I'm looking at you, Evelina, policymakers and urban plan.